Hello friends. Welcome to the Karunamai Sita channel. And today we have David Crow with us, who is a pioneer and leader in botanical medicine and grassroots healthcare. And he is a master herbalist, aromatherapist, acupuncturist, and a leading expert in Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese and Tibetan medicine. He has graduated from Ayurvedic College of Traditional Chinese Medicine and has traveled to India, Nepal, Tibet, and done his interns under Ayurvedic and Chinese masters. And he has a wealth of wisdom. He has a company that he's founded, Floracopeia, where he makes essential oils, which are perfectly organic, pesticides-free, and vegan, cruelty-free, and wonderful products. I'm definitely already getting one for myself already. So I'm looking forward to have him now today on my show and share some wisdom on Ayurveda. So welcome to our show, David. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I would love to know a little bit about your journey into Ayurveda, what inspired you into the ancient traditional system of healing in Chinese and Indian Ayurvedic system. What inspired you to start Floracopeia?
Okay, well, those are big questions. So let's see if I can give you the very short version here of 40 years, right? It's 40 years. So really, like you mentioned, my background started with Chinese medicine. I was one of the first people to graduate from the American College of Traditional Chinese Medicine in San Francisco. And that was back in the early 80s, so that was decades ago. And I got a glimpse of what classical Asian medicine was about. The acupuncture college at that time was one of the first ones, and I was in the second graduating class, so it was really like Chinese medicine had just arrived in the United States, and Ayurveda was still unknown. Chinese medicine came quite a ways before Ayurveda arrived in terms of popular awareness, popular culture awareness. So I graduated, went into clinical practice, and then learned right away what everybody learns, which is that 4 years of training is not enough to deal with what you see in the clinic. So I was very interested in knowing more about the classical systems, because what is taught, traditional Chinese medicine, as it's called, okay, TCM, it was often joked that it was actually traditional communist medicine. And that's because it was modernized, and it lost its roots. And its roots really were the deeper spiritual connection to the cosmology, you see, of Taoism and Qigong, and the connection with the spiritual lineages and practices and so forth. So I was very, very interested in, well, what are the deeper roots of this system that has been very westernized? And around the same time, when I was living and working in San Francisco, I came in contact with the Tibetan Buddhist community and met a teacher, Kalu Rinpoche, who I was very impressed by, and he had a big impact on me. And I became interested in Tibetan medicine. And Tibetan medicine is much more classical, you could say, and it's also very inaccessible. You can't study Tibetan medicine unless you actually, go to North India, to Dharamsala, and you learn Tibetan and all these kind of things. There's only maybe 2 or 3 Westerners who have actually received the full training. So I had the background in Chinese medicine. I had an interest in Tibetan medicine, and I talked to Kalu Rinpoche about it, and he said, well, there's lots of teachers and Tibetan doctors in Nepal. So I went to Kathmandu, and I didn't have any plans. I didn't have any teacher. I didn't, this was before the days of email. It was before the days of computers, actually, for most people. And I just went there looking to see what I could find. And within a couple days, the first thing that happened as soon as I arrived in Kathmandu was I got sick, of course, like everybody does. And so I went in search of a Tibetan doctor, and I found a Tibetan doctor in his clinic, and he gave me some medicines for my upper respiratory viral infection that I picked up. And I asked him, will you take a student? And he said, yeah, come back when you're better. And so I got better, and I went back. And the main difficulty that we then had was that he didn't speak any English or Nepali, and I didn't speak Nepali or Tibetan. So we had to find a translator, and I was very fortunate because we found a gentleman who had studied Tibetan medicine for many years, who also spoke fluent English, and he was a translator. So he worked with us for a full year as a translator. And I studied intensively with Dr. Ngawang Chopal. And that became the basis of a book that I wrote about that experience, called In Search of the Medicine Buddha. And during that period of time, I also started meeting the Ayurvedic doctors in Kathmandu. So I ended up going back and forth to Nepal 6 times and to India 6 times. So I've traveled to Nepal and India a total of 12 times, and spent over 2 years total, probably closer to 3 years, in these various places with one Tibetan doctor primarily, and then 9 Ayurvedic doctors. And out of those 9 Ayurvedic doctors, 8 of them were men and 1 was a woman, and Dr. Sarita Shrestha. That was my background. Now, this was before any Ayurvedic education had come to the United States. This was before Dr. Lad had opened the Ayurvedic Institute. And it was even before Ayurvedic and Tibetan medicine had really been heard of. I had a clinical practice in Los Angeles. And so what I was doing was I was spending time in Nepal and then coming back and bringing these medicines and the training to the clientele in the West. And there was a period of time in Los Angeles where I was integrating everything together, and I was doing extended treatments that were really like the first kind of panchakarma treatments in the United States, actually, where I was integrating the abhyanga, the hot oil treatments with acupuncture, and the aromatherapy steam with Shirodhara, and all of these kinds of things. So I was doing these long 2 to 3 hour treatments on people, integrating all of the classical Ayurvedic panchakarma types of therapies with acupuncture, and also teaching people meditation, and also giving them herbs. I had a full pharmacy of herbal medicines. And that's also when I got interested in essential oils and aromatherapy. And this was back in, when did all this was in evolving basically throughout the 90s, okay? So that's the background story. And out of all of that came some really important lessons that I know are part of your bigger question here. You were also asking about Floracopeia, our little essential oil company. But one of the main things that I learned early on in my studies with Dr. Chopal and the Ayurvedic doctors there in Nepal was that they were finding it increasingly difficult to get the herbs, okay, because of deforestation and because of overharvesting and so forth. And so I became aware very early on, even back into the 80s, that the foundation of herbal medicine was threatened, okay, and Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine and Tibetan medicine and shamanic medicine, classical Western herbology, all of it is based on plants. And it's all based on access to biodiversity. And so with that, there came a very big connection to the link between the individual health and environmental health. and a very big connection between needing the medicines to treat illness, and also seeing that plants play a crucial role in healing the environment also. So I started to get involved in community activism at a certain level, which was really what can we do to preserve medicinal plants? And so one of the things that I was involved in was starting what's called the Learning Garden at Venice High School in Los Angeles. It's one of the country's oldest school gardens, and it's very successful. It's been going on now for over 20 years. And we started seeing the benefits of bringing gardening into the school systems, and seeing the benefits of getting kids out of the classroom and working with the plants. But we also started seeing people planting the medicinal plants in the neighborhoods. And that is really like going back to the roots of Ayurveda, because Ayurveda came out of the forests where people were living. And so if we really want Ayurveda to be preserved, we should have it in our backyard.
Yeah, a lot of our sages had hermitages in forests, and that's where all the Ayurvedic herbs originate. Like
Right.
I remember as a child, my mother was fond of growing like flowers in her garden, but now as she's growing older, she's like all the plants she has in her balcony are like tulsi and medicinal plants
Mhm.
because she sees the importance of, you know, having plants, these medicinal plants in your home.
Yeah. Great. Well, that's been my work. I mean, you know, I could go on quite a while. It's a long story, but that's a brief introduction. So
For sure. Thank you for
yeah,
that.
you're welcome.
Small introduction also is very
Sure.
helpful because I'm seeing how actually this plant-based healthcare is so prominent in Ayurveda, and it is very potent because Ayurveda knows a lot about each and every herb. It's good sides, it's downsides, everything. Like, you know, it is unbiased. That is how I feel about Ayurveda, that it has told that there's nothing in this universe that cannot be used as a medicine. Like Charaka, Acharya Charaka says that everything has a medicinal property, even my own body. So I definitely see it's very wide in its scope, and it has a lot to offer.